Hey there, the brush tool is incredibly versatile and extremely powerful, yet for the purpose of this course we'll only scratch the surface. And that's because from my point of view there's little to be gained from mastering it. If you're into digital painting, then by all means go for it, but for everyday Photoshop use, for most projects, you'll only need to know what I'm about to show you in this lecture. Its hotkey is B, and it works in conjunction with your foreground and background colours. Remember to always create a new layer before you start painting. That will save you a lot of headaches and undoing. Okay, if I start to click and drag, I'll paint with black because that's currently on top in the toolbar. If I swap these two with X, I'm now painting with white. If you can't remember the hotkey, you can also click on this very small icon with two arrows. This does the same thing. And of course, you can change these colours by double-clicking them and have a blast on the canvas. What's essential is you constantly tap X to flip these around. That's how you get into a rhythm. In general, you'll use the brush tool to edit adjustment layers. Black removes the effect, while white puts it back. We'll rarely, if ever, use it to apply paint on the canvas in a drawing fashion. But just in case you are interested in painting, here's a cool trick that can keep you going at full speed. To sample a colour from the canvas, simply hold down Alt or Option. This temporarily switches you from the brush tool to the eyedropper. This means you can paint a little bit with one colour, then sample a new one by holding Alt. Now you can paint with that new shade, and if you want to sample again, I always hit X to flip these around, hold Alt, and now I have two new colours to work with. Constantly tap X and hold Alt from time to time, and this will give you a lot of momentum. Try it out and see how you do. Again, this isn't a requirement, but it's fun and it does increase your dexterity. On that topic, you can adjust your brush size by using your square bracket keys. The left one shrinks your brush, while the right one increases its size. Your cursor tells you what's going on, so it's pretty easy to remember. Before we get into other settings, let's talk about opacity versus flow. These two are available in the options bar, and it's going to be easier to show you the difference rather than explain it. I'll press D to restore my colours to their default values, black and white. Up top, I have both of these set at 100%, and I'm going to paint. Keep in mind you can hold down the Shift key if you want a straight line. So we have pure black, 100% opaque. Now I'll bring the opacity down to 10%. As you can see, it's transparent, and if I go back and forth, the effect is not going to build up. I have to let go of my mouse and click again. And as you can see now, the effect intensifies. Let me go back to 100% opacity and 10% flow. Here, I'm going forward. And by going back without releasing the mouse click, the effect builds up. Let me do that again, just so you're clear. So without releasing my mouse, I can slowly add more body to it. This helps a lot when you're trying to create details like highlights or shadows. It's essential you slowly build up the effect, otherwise it looks unnatural. This is what flow does. It lets you control how fast the colour is applied to the canvas. Now for an extra layer of information. If I keep my flow at 10% and my opacity at 50%, look what happens. As I click and go back and forth, I'll arrive at 50% opacity, and that's going to be it. No matter how much I continue, I won't be able to exceed that opacity level. Of course, I can always let go and continue painting, but this is a safety measure that keeps you from brushing too much. There's another point in this options bar, the blend mode. Don't confuse this with the layer blending mode. If I experiment with various settings, you can see how the behaviour of the brush changes without fiddling with the other options. I personally like to use multiply because it's pretty obvious what's going on. This is how you can obtain unique looks. There are limitless combinations of these settings, and that's why so many people love using the brush tool. I know this is a lot of information, but you have a cheat sheet attached, plus most of these are not essential for web design. Let's move along to the brush tools panels. These can be found under Window, Brush Settings. And you also have brushes. Starting with CC 2018, Adobe has dramatically changed how these options and settings are organized, so if you're using an older version, you'll have a different look. Not to worry though, as these changes have minimal impact to our particular workflow. The brush settings are just about the same. Here you'll get a wide array of brushes and the numbers represent the default size. The first one is set at 30 pixels, and once you click it, you'll be able to see a preview here. Now this panel is immensely intimidating, I know. Every single entry in this left menu has loads of settings, but fear not, as we're not going to dive into them. What is important is the following. The hardness determines how the paintbrush interacts with your canvas. 0% hardness means you'll get a soft brush, which in turn gives you a very faded look. This is great for those tricky areas where you want a soft transition. On the other hand, a very hard brush will give you a precise application. This produces very well-defined edges, and it's best used for the meat of your design in big areas where you don't want any soft spots. Now, there are a number of ways of adjusting the hardness, but right-clicking seems to be the most natural way of doing it. Most of the time we'll be working with extremes, either 0% or 100%, but intermediate settings are useful when you want to actually paint something. The spacing is a great feature for creating dotted lines. Crank it up and start playing with it. In this case, I suggest you keep the hardness all the way up. And if you add shift into the mix, this can get you great results in no time at all. Just a note, nowadays I prefer to use the Type tool to create dotted lines. It gives me more control and it's far more adjustable. Please be aware there are loads of ways of adjusting your brush size and some of its settings. We've already seen the right-click method, but you can also click here to the left side of the options bar. Other possibilities are from the brush settings and from the brushes panel on the right side. That's 4 ways in total, so just in case you don't like using one of them, you have lots of alternatives. Here's a neat feature that was introduced in CC 2018, smoothing. In previous versions, when you wanted to draw something, you get shaky edges. Even with a tablet, that still happened. A lot of users dreamt of the day when Photoshop would have the same smoothing action like Illustrator has had for years. Well, here it is. The higher the number, the smoother the result. So let me quickly show you 3 stages. First, 0% smoothing, which was how things were in CC 2017 and all other previous versions. You can see this line is seriously flawed. Move that slider up to 50% and it gets dramatically better. Photoshop does think for a bit and you'll notice a red line next to your cursor, but the results speak for themselves. And the maximum value, 100%, is of course the most forgiving. Besides smoothing, we also get a bunch of new painting options here that change the way paint is applied to the canvas. And speaking of changes, the brushes panel is also completely redesigned. Here's a comparison with the old one. How does this help us in our everyday flow? Well, it doesn't. That's why I'm not covering all these settings from this drop-down. In this course, we'll design an app icon, create a business card, a landscape illustration, a cute monster, and a whole lot more. In this course, we'll design a lot of things, but the brush tool is going to be used less than 1% of the time, so no project that I've created relies on the brush tool. In fact, the way we use it makes this smoothing option pointless as well, even though I quite like it. And with that being said, that's the brush tool in a nutshell, an immensely powerful tool, but not for our everyday projects.